I'm Carla Reeves, and this is Differently. Whether you feel stuck in survival, navigating a change, or seeking more for your life, may this podcast be your weekly nudge to take a risk to build a life that is uniquely bold, authentic, and in alignment with your deepest values. After a decade of coaching individuals from corporate leaders to creative artists to multi-million-dollar CEOs, I'm convinced we are far closer than we realize to what we deeply desire, and it's a willingness to do differently that can change everything. What if your shortcoming is actually your superpower? I actually believe this to be true and have found evidence of it over and over again with my clients over the years. The thing that we wish were different about us, or the thing that created the most pain in our life, often becomes our greatest gift or superpower. Mike DiCioccio joins me today to share his Differently story. Actually, spoiler alert, he has more than one. He's the founder of Social Chameleon, a podcast production, distribution, and content company. He leads with a service above self mentality, seeking ways he can make positive change within his community and in the world. He's the host of the Mic'd Up podcast that showcases inspiring entrepreneurs, authors, thought leaders, and more, where they share personal stories and deliver insights to provide the ammo needed to level up and achieve your greatest dreams. You're in for an inspiring story of life in entrepreneurship today and how things are often unfolding for us, even when we can't see it. Mike generously shares so many gems of wisdom. A few things that stood out to me in Mike's story. Sometimes we hide or set down pieces of ourselves in order to survive or get through a season of our life. It doesn't mean they are gone forever. While often life comes with lots of twists and turns, it's often taking us exactly where we want to go. I also saw how life is full of moments of great insight and major pivots that were absolutely necessary along the way. How sometimes we have to hit rock bottom. And Mike says, if I hit rock bottom, it's not the end of the story. It's just a new chapter and I can build on it. I love that approach. Mike leads with service and a show up and do your best attitude. He has a mantra of be great and be grateful, which is also the saying on all of his merch you can check out in the show notes. Such a heartfelt and inspiring conversation today with Mike. Sit back and enjoy. Hey, Differently listeners, I am excited today to have Mike D here with us. And Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Carla, for having me. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Tina Larson, for connecting the two of us. And I would love for you to start. I know you have a Differently story, so let's kind of dive in there.
Yeah, I'm laughing as I'm signing in to talk to you today, seeing again the name of the show and just being reminded of the whole idea of thinking differently and being differently. I love the quote, be you, everyone else is taken. And I feel like I've always kind of marched to the beat of my own drum, and I'm a drummer too, which is funny about that. But I've always kind of marched to my own beat since I was a youngster. I remember a situation when I was in preschool. I'll share this real quick to give you an idea, right? So my parents kind of laugh about this. They came, it was like the last day of school or whatever, you know, we all were coloring different things throughout the day and putting stuff all over by the way, preschool for me was like 2 nuns and a house. Okay, just to give you a perspective, it's not like this big school. So imagine my parents coming to see me and my friends and stuff. And we got all the stuff that we made for them. Well, we had on the wall everybody's name. Everybody was given a blank apple with their name on it, and then you color it in, right? So my parents and you're looking around the room trying to find your kid's apple. Well, you know, there's Derek and there's Ashley and there's Amanda and everybody's going, and it's just, you know, they're looking at all these apples, red apple, red apple, red apple. Well, they finally found mine. It was not red. I had the green apple. And my answer was, hey, there's green apples, and I actually enjoyed Granny Smith apples. So when I thought of apple, I thought of the green one, right? which funny enough, Apple computers ended up kind of using the green icon, for a while, right? They were using that as their logo. So that's kind of my think differently story from a young age. And
I
since
adore
then,
that story.
yeah, I'm very proud of it because, nobody back then told me to be different. Nobody encouraged me to do that. It just showed that I kind of was thinking that way organically from a really young age. And then all the way up, like throughout, elementary school, middle school, high school, I had influence from people I aspired to be like, and most of the time it wasn't maybe the right people when I was younger because I didn't really know about, I wasn't really into reading, and podcasts weren't out yet to get that influence. But I never was really that interested in just doing what everybody else did. It wasn't intentional, like if everyone goes left, I got to go right, or I'm just going to be the problem child that, like, if the teacher says everybody's quiet, I'm going to be loud. It wasn't that. It was just more so I remember always having this understanding of, like, if somebody tells you to do something, there's different ways to solve it, right? Like there's everyone else's way. That might work for them, and there's my way that works for me. I kind of like learned that in school with even math and stuff. Like there's different ways you could figure out how to solve it, right? So, that's kind of my differently background, I guess.
I love that. So it sounds like even with the green apple story, there wasn't like a recognition. Like I could see myself in that classroom, like recognizing all of a sudden that I was the only green apple. I think would have freaked me out. But it sounds like that wasn't the case for you. You were like proud of your apple. Am I getting that right?
I was, but my dad always joked, and rest in peace, my dad did pass away a couple of years ago, and I still haven't quite wrapped my head and heart around losing my dad. But he was always my toughest critic. I think in a good way, though, like where he wanted the best for me. But I think he kind of like tongue-in-cheek laughed about it. But it was more like, oh, we knew something was wrong with you kind of thing. Like, you're a little off, you're a little crazy. Like, not quite the black sheep of the family, but just a little bit kind of joking about, like, you're just a little different, right? But I don't think it was encouraged necessarily. But I knew, though, even though, like, when they would say that, I didn't let it, like, ruin me or anything, like, confidence-wise. But I definitely did. I would say over time, different things like that did kind of set me up where I felt a little bit behind the eight ball. But the good news is I was able to get the resources and tools later on in life where I felt like I kind of butted out on my own and I didn't need somebody to tell me it was okay, Yeah. But yeah, it was kind of more just a joke than it was anything else,
Yeah, so I know that kind of ties into your entrepreneurial story too. And actually, before I say that, I just want to say I'm sorry about the loss of your dad. And I also lost my dad in end of 2019. So my heart feels yours.
Yeah, and right back at you, Carla. If you want to talk outside of the interview about that, I'm happy to help if I can. But let's just do a little cheers to Pops and
totally
sending you and your family much love because
I
don't know that you ever really fully heal when you lose someone that close that you love,
Yeah, I don't think you do. I actually lost my mom that right after, like 6 months after, and so a day doesn't go by I don't think about them, and so it has a huge impact. But they inspire me every day too. So tell us your entrepreneurial story, because I also know I did a little bit of looking around at that article that was written about you and kind of your story, and I saw your little picture of young Mike, and so I'm curious about what are the threads from your childhood that came through in your entrepreneurial story.
Yeah, I never shared this on a show yet. I don't think on my podcast or on anybody else's show yet. But that picture of me, it actually hangs in the hallway of my parents' house. My brother and sister are also in that shot. And whenever I walk past, I always think like I could remember I was maybe 6 to 8 years old range in the photo, and just like the good old days, and then it's like thinking about where we're at today and how we all have a beginning. We all start somewhere. And every time I walk past, I always think to myself, I want to make that little kid proud. That little guy's got so much future ahead of him. And, he was just my important things back then were playing with my toys and just having fun and goofing around. And now things, are you got more serious responsibilities when you're older, but I always wanted to stay true to that little kid at heart. But the truth is, that little kid at heart, when I was young, I was very quiet. I actually, believe it or not, nobody could believe this today, because usually I'm told I talk too much or I don't shut up, right? And I talk on a podcast, every Monday, and more when I'm invited on shows like this one. And so I was actually a really quiet, shy kid, and I'm the youngest of three. And my older brother, he's the middle child. He was always he is actually a stand-up comedian today, which makes a lot of sense. But back in the day, like when Mom was running the old VHS shoulder camera, he'd be in the front. He'd be holding a brush and pretending he's singing a song, and he hams it up in front of the camera. And my sister was kind of just would have her hand on her head I can't believe he's being crazy again. And then I was kind of in the background. I was a little bit like Larry Fine of the Three Stooges, just kind of in the background doing something funny. Half the time, nobody noticed what I was doing or that I was there. And I always joke my whole upbringing was just watching my brother and sister and figuring out what to do and not to do based on the responses of my parents to them. And then you're laughing because
I'm the youngest too, and I so get that, because that was my life too. Figuring out what to do and not to do, what you could get away with and what you can't get away with.
I have to say, in that way, I definitely was a little bit lucky, because I know that they took some lumps for me over the years, and by the time it came to me going through some of that stuff, my parents were just whatever, a little bit. I mean, they still cared and stuff. Our thing growing up, I'm old school Italian. I know this is audio only, but you could see me while we're recording. I got the Italian nose, the eyebrows, the whole thing. So I can't hide from where I came from. And growing up, the big thing in our family was respect. If you went to school, if you got in trouble, the big thing that we all cared about was you had to share that with your parents, and it broke their heart that they didn't raise you that way. So if you're acting that way, my parents didn't teach me to do that stuff. So there were a couple times when I had to call home and tell my mom I did this in the lunchroom and got in a fight a couple times. And but it was just being very respectful to them. I love my parents and appreciate them. And, again, my dad was tough on me at times. But this little kid you're talking about in the photo, the quote says, your shortcoming can become your superpower. And the reason I put that on that photo is because I was very quiet. I was in a shell. I was someone who, maybe if some counselor was evaluating me, might be concerned about speech and development and stuff. And I was actually in reading classes all the way throughout school, which I was never a great fan of, because I would get pulled out of regular class to go into special reading, and then I would miss regular class and I'd be behind in that. So I always felt I'm learning how to read in this other specialized class, but I just missed a whole half hour of math, and how am I supposed to get a good grade on that quiz? So, but yeah, I kind of was that quiet kid in the early days. And it wasn't until later in life I started to have my own voice and come out of my shell. I took to music. Drums were my way of expressing myself. I played since I was about 10, 11 years old. I was blessed that my uncle, who lived in Buffalo, which is where I'm from, eventually moved to Los Angeles, and he was a drummer, and he left a bunch of his drum kits behind, and spare parts and all this stuff in my grandma's basement in the crawl space that only an 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid could get into. And so I used to go down there and just kind of explore. And eventually I was taking lessons. You start off on just a snare drum, and he knew I was taking lessons, and I talked to him. I think I talked to him on the phone when I was really young, and just said I'm really serious about this. I'm going to take lessons over the summer and take lessons in school. And once he saw that I was actually doing well with it, he allowed me to take one of his drum sets home, one piece at a time. And eventually I was in every school band, orchestra, wind ensemble, marching band, jazz band, and rock and roll band. On my 18th birthday, I played my first show, which I shared in the article. So that's kind of when I came out of my shell that way. But as far as, in school, I used to be told probably by like third grade to sixth grade range that I always talked a lot. So I think what happened is once I came out of my shell, I got comfortable really quick. Like I was always trying to make people laugh, goof around. So I think it was just when I was really little. Maybe it was being that third child where the attention wasn't really on me very much. So I kind of just played it up. I'm good. I'm in the corner. I'm not getting in trouble.
Yeah, I can so relate to your story. You took me back to grade school. Like I would always, on my report cards, there would always be a mark on confidence because I was that quiet, shy kid that didn't have confidence. And I remember my mom talking to me about that. And it wasn't until high school that I kind of came out of that shell. And so say the quote again that's in the picture.
Yeah. I don't know that I really hit on it, but the quote is you can let your shortcoming become your superpower, right? And so for me, what that means is like someone may, let's say that they have an accident and they no longer could use their legs. So now all they can do is sit all day long. Like they could just, if their career path changes or their home life changes, they can get into something else that they can still master or be great at and be influenced by. Because that event happened, you can then change it so it happened for you, not to you. And all of a sudden you can be great in something different. And that shortcoming could now become your superpower, right? So for me, it was like kind of being shy and afraid of like the stage. And then once I realized and got my confidence over that, I realized this is my gift. This is my calling. This is what God put me here to do, is to interview people on podcasts and inspire people either through my story by doing or sharing other people's stories through their coming on mic'd up and sharing their story, just like what we're doing here. And so I felt that that's my calling, and I just thought it was interesting that the shy kid that didn't really talk is now using my voice to inspire. So your shortcoming could totally become your superpower.
I wanted people to hear that again because I see that all the time in my work with clients, is that their greatest struggle in life, their greatest pain in life is often their greatest gift. And it's so incredibly true. And I also just want to highlight what you said, that, this idea of life isn't happening to you, but happening for you. I think that just creates a completely different lens to be able to look at your life through, and then be able to, like you said, take it from there to create something out of that. And I love that you've done that. So take us into that journey of becoming an entrepreneur, and what was that like for you? And just give us a sense of that journey.
Yeah, I'm going to share that in 1 second, but I thought of someone as we're talking about the shortcoming quote again. Rosie Quinn, she's this beautiful little girl. She's probably 12 years old now. She has alopecia, which means you lose your hair, right? And so as a little girl, she'd just wake up and lumps of hair, or clumps of hair were out, and she'd be like, what's going on? She noticed her friends at school. Obviously, this wasn't happening to everybody. And her mom came up with this beautiful story about alopecia, about this little girl whose hair goes on vacation. Right. And so the little girl in the book is her, and it's Rosie, and she's bald at that point. And her hair is literally like a character in the book going on vacation. And they share this story, and it helps kids understand what this is and that it's okay. And then she started to create these like headbands that she would wear, and she'd personalize them and color them and make them beautiful. And then she started to make these kits that were available online to people and kids who, whether it was cancer where you were losing your hair going through chemo, or alopecia patients, or other people that were struggling with, hair loss. And she started this whole organization, Coming Up Rosies, I believe it's called. It's been a minute since we've talked. And she's got a great following on social media, and she talks about it. And she was like 10 when this was all happening. She was on the news, and her personality is and she's just beaming with personality. And her shortcoming, the fact that she was losing her hair and was this thing she was really concerned about, and obviously her parents were worried and wanted to figure out what it was, to being like shy and afraid in school that people were going to make fun of her, and I believe they did at a certain point, to it then becoming her thing that she's helping people all around the world. She's inspiring. She's got the book out. She's got the headbands. She's got all this really cool stuff that, like, if that never happened to her, if she just had a regular head of hair, I'm sure she'd still be a beautiful girl going through life and doing cool things. But there's no way she would have been inspiring and helping that many people. So I think that's a really good example of, like, when I saw it and it just was like beaming ear to ear with a smile, knowing somebody literally is doing something out of their superpower is what started as their shortcoming. It's crazy.
Incredible. That is such a beautiful story. Coming Up Rosie's, I'm going to have to go check that out.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Shout out to Rosie and Paula Quinn. I got to reach back out to them. They're very sweet. Paula's her mom.
Was she on your podcast?
She was, yeah. So a little shameless plug, but I mean, come on, let's give Rosie some. Yeah, spend a minute.
Let's give it a plug.
But yeah, if you go to, if you want, you can link it. But if you go to Mic'd Up on YouTube and type in Rosie and Paula, I'm pretty confident that'll come up.
Okay, good. I'll make sure we put it in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Okay, back to your journey.
Yes. So my journey as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship was not something in our family line. It wasn't something I saw a TV show. I mean, heck, when I was a little guy, I was rock and roll drummer, or I thought I was going to be the next Steven Spielberg, right? So my brother and I shared that in the article too. Like, we just loved creating and making movies. Again, I mentioned my mom had like the shoulder camera from the 80s and 90s with the actual VHS tape that goes inside of it. We were making movies with our friends. Like, our buddies were all playing football and getting beat up on the basketball court or whatever, and playing rough sports, which we did a little bit too. But we're over here like in our garage writing a screenplay. Like, what's Ben gonna do? He'll be the bad guy. Who's gonna be the good guy? And we'd watch movies and get ideas and all. It was pretty fun. I mean, I love my childhood was so entertaining in that way. Like, we didn't need much. We had like a box of props and different odds and ends around the house that mom and dad didn't care about. I mean, became props, and we would have our toys. We'd use like fireworks to blow things up and videotape it like we were having these big special effects, right? So just to give you an idea, I had that creative gene since I was little. And then, like I said, musically, I was gifted and talented and played throughout the years, but I never knew that I'd end up in business or even sales. But I have to say, sales definitely was like the prerequisite for me to get comfortable and confident enough to start a business. So really, when the light bulb hit, I was in my early 20s. I was dating my then girlfriend and eventually fiance, and we're getting serious. I started to save up for a ring. I was about 23 years old, working at a music store. Picture long, shoulder length mic. I looked like Ringo Starr, pretty much. That's how my hair looked. And I kind of looked a little bit like him at the time. That was partially my nickname at the music store, but some people call me Ringo. And so if you can imagine this 23-year-old kid, barely making any money, going through college and falling in love, I knew I needed to do something to save up for this ring. So I was kind of looking for better opportunities. And at the music store, my number one role was to sell. I got a very small commission, but I was learning how to like actually have a conversation with people, walk them through the products. When there was nobody in the store, we were product knowledge, like training all the time. And so when people would come in, I learned that I had to be a better listener and then figure out like what kind of instruments do they like, or what's their story. And people, a lot of musicians love to tell their story. They come in, oh, let me tell you about the time I played, this club in Buffalo that's not there anymore, across the street, And I just was like I was soaking up all this music knowledge and history of our local musicians and stuff. And then I learned how to properly do a presentation and then ask for the sale, bring it up to the counter and make it happen. And we would do like package deal pricing. And so I started to learn a little bit of that whole thing. And then I ended up working for a mattress company right after that, because I knew that like the $7 plus commission wasn't going to really help much with the ring. And also I knew we were going to be getting married. So I was looking a little bit more for like that American dream, right? So I ended up working at this mattress company that I thought, honestly, laughing at it now, the only reason I took the gig was because it was $10 an hour at the time, and it was better than 7. So I'm like, I guess I could sell mattresses, whatever. Kind of felt like a sellout from all my buddies at the music store. We're like, what are you doing? But so I took this job literally for that, and then I was awesome at it. I just really mastered. I figured out what it was, what I was good at. It wasn't talking. It wasn't even listening, because at first I stunk at listening. I talked way too much in sales. My gift was helping people. And in a mattress store, it was Sleep Number, which is one of the top retailers now. And at the time, they weren't as well known. But people would come in. They'd be like in a car accident. They'd be in years of, disc surgeries and injuries. And I learned about L4s and 5s and all crazy stuff. Couples very rarely would be able to sleep in the same bed, or if they did, they were never comfortable. One was comfortable, one hated it. All kinds of stuff where I'm hearing like all these, people that are not getting quality sleep. And as you know, quality sleep is so important to quality life. So if you're not getting a full night's sleep, most of these people are not working well. They're kind of miserable and tired all the time. And so my heart was like, man, I want to help these people out. So when I did my presentation at the store, it was more so than like, I'm going to get paid some money if I sell this. And I started to learn like how to do a sales process of discovery and really learn about the person that's standing in front of me and treat them like I would treat my mom and dad. It's kind of my mentality. So a lot of the people that I was talking to were about their age, I'm talking at the time, my average client was probably 45 to 75 years old. It also was a product that had a little bit a higher price tag on it, so it wasn't as much the college student coming in to get their dorm room bed. We did offer something similar to that, but that wasn't our bread and butter. So I'm talking to a lot of like retirees and people who are a little bit later on in life, and then kind of the generation of married couples that are on their second mattress, and they're in their 40s, maybe 50s now, whatever. And I just really fell in love with helping people. And then, selling a $3,500 mattress is not just that easy where you talk to someone, it's a slam dunk. So I had to get really good at my positioning skills in giving a proposal and having like that mini negotiation at the counter. And over time, I started to read sales books, and podcasts were just coming out, and started listening to some stuff that would help me with like better closing. Well, my first year in business, there's a reason I'm sharing all of this with you, is because I got President's Circle. So remember that little kid that was quiet that finally came out of my shell? My first year with this company, I won like the highest award you can get, which is like top sales percentage. I was in the like top 5% with the company, and I got to go on this trip, and I got to meet like the CEO and the marketing directors and all the people I saw in the training videos, like when I sat in the back room and watched them on like this 20-inch screen on one of those pull-out carts, if you remember those. And I'm meeting everybody like that are the C-level people of this company, and we're cracking beer and we're having breakfast together. And it was out in Park City, Utah, where like the Olympics were held a little bit earlier, like maybe 10 years prior to that, and they kept everything still, all the signage was up and stuff. Really cool. And a light bulb went off. I'm like, these people are no better than I. Like the CEO of this company puts his pants on the same way I do. They're real people. You might think that they don't have any personality or can't hang and just be normal, but they all were. They all were very normal. And it just made me realize, like, I had this weird thing in my head that I could only be blue collar. I could only be the employee. This is for other people. And that was broken. I'm like, ooh. Like maybe there's more for me in life than just being a 9-to-5er and trying to, make an income to survive. Maybe there's like, I'm capable of more than that. And especially I'm in this like group of people that's a small percentage of the workforce of this company. So after a couple of years, I continued to do well. And it was 2012, my first like really early LinkedIn days, when it was literally like just your resume. You didn't really post content or anything like that. It was just you threw your resume on there, and basically every day my inbox would come up with new recruiters, because I had all my sales awards and everything like that, and they'd always ask me about it. And if it was a product or company I was interested in, I'm like, take an interview. And eventually I did with Liberty Mutual Insurance, funny enough, and I was like, man, I know nothing about insurance. I don't know what you're going to do. Like, to get me to be able to speak on insurance, because all I know is I pay my premium. I don't like to do that. I just, whatever. And they said, don't worry, man. Like, you know how to talk to people, you know how to sell, and you can relate. If you're doing good at that company, you can do that here. So they said, we'll send you to Florida. So get me out of Buffalo. And it was February at the time. And it was like, snowing in Buffalo. They're like, we'll send you down to Florida for 2 weeks, get you the company laptop, and here's all your benefits and 401k and everything. And here I am, newly married. I'm like, this is freaking beautiful, right? This is a great situation. So I said yes to it, and I did that for like 3 to 4 years. And then eventually the store manager position opened up at Sleep Number again. And that came knocking on my door, and I agreed to it. And I'm sharing that part of the story because now I can understand that, like, 4 to 5 years in sales, selling high ticket items and being an insurance agent, you have to find everything. Like, you have to go hunting, you have to join Chamber of Commerce's, sit at people's kitchen tables. So that shy kid was way out of the box now, right? So I was really developing my sales skills and being a professional at it. And then I got the opportunity to go back to Sleep Number and be the store manager. And now I was managing a team. Now I'm the one doing sales training. I'm the one that mostly had to speak to every situation in the store that was at my level. If not, I got on the phone and had to go up the line. But so I learned all that, and I just knew, okay, this was all stepping stones to me eventually starting my own company. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, when I was young, I had that creative energy, the musician in me, the person behind the camera editing and all this stuff. I just felt like that was stomached. And when I got married, my wife never, and she's not my ex-wife, we were married for 6 years, but she never told me to stop necessarily. But and we have a beautiful daughter together who's now 8 years old. And when Isabel was born, things change, life changes. You're not banging on the drums, making as much noise at home and stuff when you have a newborn. So I ended up getting a digital set with headphones and trying to work through that. But it just got to a point where what was most important to me, and this is my decision, nobody held a gun to my head, that I was going to be business Mike. And so I was doing the insurance game and the store manager game. And but over time, I started to lose direction, and who the hell is Mike? I don't even know anymore. And when the divorce happened in 2017, it was an opportunity for me to literally look myself in the mirror and say, who do you want to be? Like, who are you? What's your purpose? And I wasn't really thinking about that before. I was just going with what was right. What was the best business move? What's going to bring home the most money for our family so we can have organic groceries from the local grocery store and take care of my family. And then eventually it was like, man, you're not happy though. Like, you're doing all this stuff that you think you need to be doing, but what do you want to be doing? So I got real and I said, I want to start a company, media and marketing. And I sat in my apartment, and I remember sitting there for maybe a couple hours, and I wrote out 100 names or so for the company. And I didn't want it to be like Mike DiCioccio and Associates or DiCioccio Marketing, or I just felt like that was kind of the corny way out. Like, if I'm a media company and marketing, I want to be creative. So the idea of chameleon came to me, because when people would ask me in sales, why are you so successful? I used to say, it's because I could be like a chameleon. So if an 80-year-old woman came into Sleep Number and she just had back surgery, I can legitimately have a conversation with her and be nice to her and give her a great sales presentation and still be Mike. I'm not being fake, but I could communicate with her. And if a 15-year-old came in after school, killing time before his parents pick him up from the mall, and he's like looking at pillows, I could talk to that kid too. And then the newly married couple. And it wasn't like I was being fake. It's just, it's kind of like when you're doing a stage performance, like, are we going to have the song go extra long right now? What's the audience doing? And if the audience isn't really into it, you may just end your song like the studio version. But if they're freaking going crazy, you might give your bandmates that look of like, we're going to do this like 1 or 2 more times. Let's keep rocking, and the guitar solo could go 3 minutes instead of 30 seconds. However, you just read your audience. And I was really good at that. So I said, I'm kind of like a chameleon. I could change and adapt based on who I'm talking to. So the name chameleon was used. It was too general, just the one word chameleon. And there also was like a jewelry brand They spelled it a little different, I think. So I had to get like, oh man, how do I work that in? So then I found out that there's a term social chameleon, which means basically someone that can go into like a networking setting and adjust. There's actually a negative connotation to it because they do talk about that being like you're being fake. But I didn't really care. Like to me, it wasn't fake. It was being genuine. You're just helping out the person that you're talking to the best way you can. So I said, that sounds pretty cool. Social chameleon. Plus I was doing social media. It kind of like made sense. People knew what the heck we did just by the name. And it took off. And then after a couple of years, it was me, myself, and I. Like I was helping clients one-on-one, and I was going locally to Buffalo, little shops and walking up and down different streets that had a ton of small family businesses on them. One of my first clients was a bakery that I still work with today and help them out. And it was like, trying to get in the door was tough because they're like, who are you? What's your background? And in the beginning, the early days, you can't really show them like these deep case studies. So it was a little tricky in the beginning. But the thing that happened was I was like, I wanted to do more video. So I started to pitch people on like, I'm going to do your video commercials for like social media ads, or just your content for Instagram, whatever. And so I started to work with other people that were even more advanced with like capturing things on camera, still images and video. I had a buddy that was a videographer and doing weddings. I was like, man, we can do business together. You could do your weddings. I'll help you get corporate gigs. So we worked together for a minute. A couple years in, this is where things change into what Social Chameleon is today. One of my friends, and we became business partners. I was helping him with his business out in Rochester, New York. And he had a podcast that was doing really well. Had like at that point 25,000 downloads, which is pretty decent size for that time. And I was listening to it all the time, going back and forth to Rochester to visit him and hang out and help him with his business. And then he asked me one day, he's like, man, I need a new producer. I'm looking for someone to edit this. Like you went to Buffalo State for media production. Like you could probably do a podcast. I'm like, I guarantee I can do it. I just, let me see what I could do. So I did 50 episodes of his show, and then eventually I was like, instead of audio only, why don't we get you on YouTube and we'll do a video version? So I knew I could do that, and he was very happy with kind of upgrading into the video version of it, right? And so after 50 episodes, I got the confidence again coming out of my shell that like I could do this too. And I started to feel this heart tug that God was telling me, man, it's your turn. It's your time. Start your show. And a friend of mine was kind of nudging me like, you help everybody else. You help him. You help her. Do this for you. So her name's Jackie Roach. My friend kind of said, do it. Like she challenged me. And if you want to get me to do anything, challenge me, because that's when I will take action immediately. And so I bought equipment and stuff I didn't even know how to use yet and told her, like, you're going to be my first guest. And I interviewed her, episode 1 of Mic'd Up. There's 170 out now as we record. So that was many weeks ago, and she was my first guest. And then one of my clients that I did a video testimonial for, they saw my email come out that I have a new podcast, and they were like, hey, our board of directors has been talking about launching a show. We have no clue what to do. How do we do this? And I'll share this real quick. You know the movie Dumb and Dumber, where there's the big bus of like bikini models that pulls up, and you got Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels right there. And they're like, hey boys, we're looking like for 2 people that can come on tour with us and help us like whatever, wax us up before the competition. And they're just like, oh my God, there's a town 5 miles down that way, right? Well, that was me. They're like, hey, we're looking for somebody who can produce our podcast for us. And I was like, oh, I could teach you how to do it. And they're like, you idiot, we want you to do it for us. I was like, oh, cool, I could do that too. So that was my first podcast client. That was 2019 or 2018, I believe that one was. And since then, I actually decided to pivot and get away from doing the other stuff I wasn't even having fun doing anymore. I specialized in podcasting and went from 1 client up to about 10. That got me to the point where I needed to hire a team. I just wasn't able to produce that many shows in 1 week, as you know. You're head nodding right now because you know how much work goes into it. And it was a blast. So I just started to interview other like editors and people I really liked their personality and their story. And I went from me, myself, and I to having 2 editors on the team, a PR person who helps with like the podcast management for clients. guest sourcing. I've had a couple of creative directors on the team over the years. Yeah, it's been amazing. It's definitely not me anymore. Some people accidentally call me the social chameleon, but that's not what it means. I am not the social chameleon. The company is Social Chameleon, and we offer podcast services. Yeah, so that's kind of my whole, like, how sales got me into the confidence to have those big conversations and close large ticket sales. And then my stint as a store manager allowed me to learn, like, managing a team and being comfortable doing that and running sales meetings to eventually becoming an entrepreneur. But I'm not going to lie, like, it's not that easy of just because you have some sales experience and manager experience in corporate makes you the perfect entrepreneur. I mean, I got my butt kicked the first couple of years of reality that nobody knew who I was and cared who I was, really, just because I started a business. And it took me learning how to prove to people that I was worth their time, energy, and that I could produce an ROI. And sometimes I failed at that. And other times I hit home run, and they're like, man, this is the best thing that's ever happened to our business. So, and once I got into podcasting, the story just became, we're building you a new brand or an existing brand, and we're going to amp it up. And it's all about the storytelling and inspiring people, because that's really what we do at Social Chameleon. Like, most of our content is designed to inspire. I'm also interested in getting into Christian and faith-based podcasts too, because I love sharing that, getting more of that influence out into the world. And so that's where Social Chameleon is in 2023. We're coming off of our best year last year by a lot. We actually grew through the pandemic because everything's remote. And so that's kind of my entrepreneurial journey in a nutshell.
Such a great story. I mean, there's so many things that stand out to me, but one thing that really stands out to me is just your desire to help people. Like, that was kind of a thread all the way through. And what's kind of cool about that is that even this confidence piece, it's like, I think sometimes, people that come to me, they'll say, like, they want more confidence. They want to live more confidently. And confidence isn't something like it happens over time, right? Like, if you look at your story, it's like one step, I'm going to help this person, and that led to this, and that built your confidence, and then that led to the next step. And it was like a willingness to keep stepping, right? And taking those little bold steps that became big, bold steps over time. And I think that that's so important for people to hear, that the feeling of confidence follows the actions that align, right, with stepping out a little bit more outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. And like I said, I definitely did it differently for sure, because I didn't have a business degree. I didn't really even have much business knowledge when I started. But what I had was, I was listening to a lot of podcasts at the time, and shout out to Ed Milet. He shared his story on other people's shows. And Ed was sharing the story that, like, him and his wife were at rock bottom. They got their water turned off, and they were at their apartment where they had to literally shower in, like, the pool shower, and he had to hold up a towel so his wife wouldn't be exposed. And, I mean, Ed, I don't like to, just throw numbers out there, but I have heard that financially he's like over, his net worth is over $400 million plus or whatever, probably a lot more today. My point is, he started from rock bottom, and I've heard that story over and over and over again. And I just knew that if I ever hit rock bottom, it wasn't the end of the story. It just was a new chapter, and you built on it. And I did hit rock bottom.
Such a great way to look at that.
I hit it emotionally, spiritually, financially. I remember looking at my accounts. There's literally a couple pennies in one and maybe 13 cents in the other one day, and I was like, I got to figure this out, because I was just in such a rut. Some of those days are really rough in the early going. But guess what? Once I got out of my own way and I realized, pick a lane and do something that you can excel at. And I knew how to produce podcasts at a high level. So I was confident again in that if somebody paid me, whether it was $100 or $10,000 to do the show, if they paid me, I could deliver. And that's why I was so good at Sleep Number, is because I knew their products were great. I slept on one myself. They delivered on what their promises were, and it was top quality. So yeah, if someone was like, why should I pay you $5,000 for this bed? Nobody asked me that question, but like just making it simple. Why is it that valuable? I could speak to it confidently, like no question. Like if you're going to sleep great for the next 20 years, come on, man, it's worth that and then some. So like when it came to business, the first couple of years, I couldn't really tell a successful marketing story. It was tough. So my confidence was shot and I was financially in the dumps. And then once I like fell in love with podcasting, I was listening to them and I saw their value and I was learning from so many great people. I called it the University on Wheels, and I was going around to my sales appointments. I'm like, oh my God, I could do something I know I'm good at. I became great at, and I can help people again. My confidence went up, and guess what? People were willing and excited to work with me. And then when you deliver on it over and over and over and over again, podcasts are recurring, which is another, wasn't the reason I got into it, but it is a smart business move because typically shows keep recurring. So it's not like a client. In the early days, they'd hire me to like build their website, and I'd spend 6 months with them, and then the site was built, and I would be done, and my income was gone. Where with this, it's like I got relationships. All of my clients I've had a relationship with for the newest one is September. Everybody else I've had 2 to 3 years of relationships with now.
Love that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, love that. The other thing that stood out in your story to me was this, being at that in Utah, at that event and getting that recognition and kind of looking around and realizing like, wait a minute, like these are just people. And you made me remember I got invited at some point to come in and coach these top executives in this company. And I was freaking out because I'm like, I haven't done what they've done. I haven't managed that many people. Like, who am I to go in and do that? And then I realized like they actually struggle with the same human things that I help all my clients with. They're just people just like us, right? Just like you said, they get up and they put their clothes on the same way we do. And they inside, they struggle with the same exact things. And I could be the expert on that. I didn't have to be the expert on all the other things that they did. They knew how to do that. They needed someone to help clean up their inner world. And so that really stood out to me. Okay. So as we wrap up, I know you have some merch and with a message of be great, be grateful. So share a little bit, what does that mean to you? And then kind of wrap us up and tell us where people can learn more about all the great things you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been a fun conversation with you, and I just like the idea of what you stand behind, and I'm proud to be on your show and grateful to be here. So the whole idea of be great, be grateful. So the first part of that, be great. My mentality is if you're doing something, do it to the highest of your ability. Okay, if you don't believe in God, whatever you believe in, but to me, I believe in God. So God gave me these talents and gifts and ability to get up today, put both feet on the ground, get dressed and go and have a great day. So if I have a less than great day, that's my fault, right? Now, sometimes things happen and they don't always go great. Then you get up the next day and you try your best again. But I always felt like whether I was at the music store or I worked, all these other retail gigs when I was in my teens, I was at a mall kiosk selling watches for like, who knows what, $6 an hour probably. But I wanted to be the best guy in that booth because I just always wanted to give the best of what I can. I have this ability. So I think if you're not doing that, if you're not great, whether it's in sports and your family, and look, I've failed so many times. I'm not trying to say that I'm great in every second of the day. I make mistakes all the time, but I learn from them and I try to get better. And my goal wholeheartedly is to do it great. I am a dad. If I have a day when I just feel like, man, I kind of like let my daughter down or I'm not great in this or whatever, like my big thing is with her, I always struggle like being on time to different things because I'm very present in what I'm doing, but it allows me to sometimes forget, okay, dude, you gotta like get somewhere else now. So sometimes I've earned my name as like last minute Mike. So I'm not great in that. I'm not great at being on time, but I actively am trying to improve or at least acknowledge it and improve. But that's the first side of it. be great in anything that you do, right? And gratitude is something I've learned over time. I think it's because I heard it on a lot of podcasts I was listening to and interviewing people. So many people in my early days of podcasting had gratitude journals, and I was learning about it. I'm like, man, I just love this. And the idea is you cannot be in true fear or be mad or angry or have angst when you're in a true, pure state of gratitude. And that doesn't mean that you just sit here and think of like one thing you're happy about. It means like you really settle in with yourself and you get real and you listen to yourself and you say, I'm grateful for this opportunity with Carla. And then I actually think about why. Oh my God, I got to share my story. There might be someone who's still in their shell that's looking to come out, and maybe my story inspires them, or maybe they listen to this one because they're interested, and the next one is the one that breaks them through. And it wasn't even my story, but I was kind of the pathway to it. So grateful for that. And all of a sudden now I'm really thinking about these things and I'm smiling thinking about them, right? And so I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm not, have anxiety in that moment. So it gets you in this pure state of gratitude. And so I feel it's very important to do that in the morning. It basically sets you up with like a full deck of cards, I feel like. And then when you go to bed, and I don't do this every night, I still forget. Sometimes I'm just so exhausted that when I look at my pillow, I don't even remember how I got to my bed. It's like I gravitated from one side of the room into that, right? Like you're just that exhausted. So I don't always remember to do it. Again, I'm not perfect. But whenever I do think of it, I do come up with 3 things, and I try to do 3 new things a day. And it could be the same. There's nothing wrong with being grateful for something that's really important to you over and over and over again. And it just feels so good. And I feel like you go to bed with this like fresh reset. You want to rejuvenate while you're there. And when you wake up, you want to reset again. And it's a beautiful thing. I did create some merch out of it. Thank you for the shout out on that. You'll see me a lot of times in like promo pics and social media pics wearing a shirt or hoodie or hat that says BGBG. No surprise what that stands for, but a lot of people don't know. It's Be Great, Be Grateful. And I worked with a friend of mine who had her own t-shirt line out and these really cool, quirky designs. Shout out to Samantha Ray Hughes. And I just said to her one day, I'm like, man, you're really good at this. Do you think you can help me get like a merch line out for my podcast? And within like days, she had mock-up designs. And what you see now is everything that came through her and I working together probably a year ago. I'm losing track of time. And then I realized, like, look, I don't need the $3 I can make on each of these shirts because, like, there's so little room when you sell a shirt online and drop ship it and everything. I'm like, all right, so like, I'm not gonna start selling T-shirts and merch and then like retire early from it. What I want to do is any money I do get through it, I want to give back. And so I picked a number of charities. Some are local, some are worldwide. And I picked something that's really near and dear to my heart that's important to me. And it's anti-sex trafficking is where most of the money is going to different organizations. Knowing how much of that still goes on in our country, it goes on way more than people care to admit or research. There's like, it's like the second greatest crime in our country. And like, it barely gets talked about. Right. I think it's like gun violence, and second is like human trafficking, something like that. Right. It's horrible that people turn their eyes to it. They just want to be like out of sight, out of mind. Like it's happening, but I can't help it. Well, you can. There's organizations that are actually on the boots on the ground. So I want to give to them. And then someone here in Buffalo started an organization called Buffalo Gives, which was helping with the Ukraine events, and she was going back and forth. She had her own local business. She had no reason to do this, but she literally like put herself at risk and went back and forth and was like driving trucks around with gear, and she had like tactical gear, and she was bringing supplies to people in Ukraine. And I was like, I need to help her out. And a couple other friends that have their own organizations that I just felt were something I wanted to give to. So basically, whenever I get my $3 or $5, whatever I get per item, I just let it kind of accumulate. And then every time I get to like a $50 or $100 mark, I just pick a different one and give them a donation. And then it goes back up to $50, $100, and I give it to another one. And I've been doing that for about a year. Yeah. The website is mikedupmerch.com. So it's Mike, M-I-K-E. And then, so Mic'd Up is M-I-K-E-D-U-P merch.com. So it's super easy.
And then your Social Chameleon website?
Yeah, and the business is socialchameleon.us. We are in the United States. And somebody snagged the .com, so we're the .us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Your story is really inspiring. I feel just impacted by your story today. And I know everybody listening has probably gleaned one or more really great gems from what you shared. And I'm also reminded, just as we close, like I've been thinking lately how like the most important like person I can serve is the person right here and now in my path, today. I think sometimes as business owners, it's like, we need more. Like my mind will say that, like, I need more. And what I've been reminding myself of is just help and serve the person right here in my path so powerfully. And sometimes that's your child interrupting, your day, or a phone call you receive unexpectedly, or someone in your path. So I thank you for that reminder today, and just, for sharing your story. It was really, really awesome.
Can I say two things real quick? And
yes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Close us up with two things
I'd like to share is don't let other people, when they gave up on their dreams, a lot of times the folks in our circle who love us may have given up on their dreams, and they don't mean to hurt us or do any damage. But most family members are going to tell you and give you direction to do what's safe, comfortable, security blanket, and they love you and they care about you, and it makes sense. It makes sense to do the thing that makes sense, but that doesn't always make sense for your heart, right? So when 100%. I was going through my divorce, everybody said it's not a good time to start a business. Don't do this. You don't know what you're doing yet. You got to figure it out first and build it later. And I was like, if I sat here and tried to figure out the best business ever, I'd still be sitting there figuring it out. Like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but the fact that I have success in it now is because I got started. And so everybody knows, you got to know your own threshold of how much crap you're willing to take. If you're willing to eat ramen noodles and potentially not be able to cover rent and, live with family like I had to for a period of time, and do what you need to do and not maybe live this elaborate lifestyle, but the benefit is you get to do your dream, then I'd say go for it. It's not... I want to say everyone has the opportunity to go and do your dream, but you only you know what your threshold is. Someone else might tap out. It's like a wrestling match. Someone might tap out in the first time they get punched, but the best and the greatest UFC fighters are the guys and gals that they just can take punches and they just keep going or whatever. And that's what it takes to be a great entrepreneur, is like, you got to know that punches are coming your way, but don't be discouraged because somebody else will clock out in the second minute of doing it. So know who you are, know how you're built, and know what your dream is, and go and freaking do it. I'm not saying to not be smart. So if that means figure out how you can do it smart up front too, but go and do it. That's number one. And number two is, you don't always have to have your cup full to be able to serve. A lot of times people feel like, man, I'm hurting, I'm broken, man, I'm going through a divorce. What am I going to help this guy do? I think the people that are going through the stuff in the moment can help you way more than someone who's maybe got a cushy, safe, beautiful lifestyle. Great for them. But how are they going to help you talk about overcoming adversity if they've just sat in their home and never dealt with it? You know what I mean? So I know a lot of times I felt unworthy of being able to help someone because I was hurting in so many different areas. But then I just have a cup of coffee and give some people my mind, and I say, you don't have to listen to me, but this is how I think. And man, that's amazing. You helped me out so much. And I'm just like, man, yeah, you don't have to be all put together to be able to help somebody else.
So incredibly true. And also, sometimes when you're in a slump yourself, the greatest thing you can do to get out of that slump is actually get out of your own world and go get in somebody else's world. And you'll find that you pick both of you up. So good.
Amen.
Oh,
yeah.
Mike, thank you so much for your time and your story and your heart and for being here today. And to everybody,
thank you.
have an
This
awesome
was a lot of fun.
day.
And shout out to your audience. And thank you guys for tuning in all the way to the end. You know what to do. Be great and be grateful.
Beautiful. Have an awesome day, everyone. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Differently. I hope it stirred your thinking, and I invite you to take one inspired action from something that stood out to you. If you want to hear more conversations like this, be sure to hit follow on your favorite podcast app. And if this episode could impact someone you know, please help us spread the word and pass it along. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. See you next week.